Well, I had the whole show mapped out. I had things we were going to talk about. We had a big weekend, a lot of fun stuff that we did. Tomorrow's a big day. It's anniversary day, and I wanted to talk about all of that stuff, and we probably will at some point. But then I got distracted, and I found something else that I needed to get off my chest, as it were. So we're probably going to go in a little bit different direction today. We'll still do story time, but first segment of the show, we'll talk about something else. So today is episode 15 of Beezy's Stream of Consciousness podcast. I'm your humble host, Beezy, and today is Monday, June 10th of 2024, and we're coming to you from Starbase One Studio. Looks like I'm missing some of my staff tonight, but I do have, we are able to produce the show with Elsa, so she is here, so we'll be bouncing some things off of her. The program is made possible with the technical expertise of Audacity and the distribution expertise of Podbean. I will remind everybody that I'm on, this show is on several podcasting media, including Podbean, Spotify, YouTube, among others. And I will be making an announcement on X, formerly Twitter. So be sure to follow us if you like what we're doing here, and stay tuned in, stay connected, and it'll be fun. So, but listen, I like I said, I wanted to talk about this past weekend. Susan and I, in anticipation of our anniversary coming up tomorrow, we went out to the old ball yard yesterday and saw our World Series champion hero Texas Rangers prevail 7-2 against the Giants of San Francisco, and it was a great time at the old ball yard. We were there with close to 40,000 other enthusiasts, and it was just a great time. And I wanted to talk about that. I wanted to talk about anniversary things and so forth. But then today I was on the road, as you know. In addition to being being your humble host for the podcast, I'm also a highly trained and sometimes competent delivery driver for a great nationwide company with a red logo with two D's in it. And I'll let you figure out the rest. You might say I was dashing through the whatever, but anyway, I'll let you figure it out. Yes, DoorDash, of course. Shameless plug for DoorDash. Thank you very much, guys. Anyway, and as is my wont, I was listening to the radio while I was making my deliveries, and I was listening to 1310 The Ticket. And for those of you perhaps in other jurisdictions that are unfamiliar with the ticket is somewhat of a sports radio institution here in the DFW Metroplex. I know that with the interwebs, you can tune in worldwide and listen in to the ticket. And I've been doing that now since their inception 30 years ago. They are celebrating their 30th anniversary this year, and we're happy for that. But I was listening this afternoon, and their afternoon show is called The Hard Line, and one of the hosts of the show is Bob Sturm. I follow him on X, and he's great. He always he knows his stats, he knows his stuff. He always brings the receipts. He never rectally derives anything. and he's great to listen to with his co-host Corby, and I've been listening to them for a long time. So, but anyway, Bob was in Boston yesterday or last night at the Boston Garden at the NBA Finals, Game 2 between our heroes, the Dallas Mavericks, and those the Boston Celtics. I call them the Celts. But anyway, he was there courtside with others in the radio or the broadcast community, sports community, and he was doing his thing in anticipation of their show today, and but there was a gentleman, and I'm relating Bob's story. I don't know any of this firsthand, and I'm going somewhere with all of this, so bear with me. Yeah, there was a gentleman courtside who obviously was not interested in the game at hand. He, according to Bob, he had a cell phone in his lap, and he was watching the Yankee game, which was Sunday night baseball on, I guess, on the ESPN. And anyway, he was watching that. He had his earpods in, and don't know what he was listening to. It probably wasn't the baseball game because, according to Bob, he had the sound turned up on his phone all the way. Now, I watched some of that game. In fact, I watched a lot of it, and the Boston Garden was quite loud. The local denizens of Beantown were quite vocal and vociferous in their support of the Celts. Every time Dallas touched the ball, they were yelling defense at the top of their lungs. Every time Kyrie Irving touched the ball, they booed to shake the rafters. And anytime the locals did anything right or the Mavericks did anything remotely wrong, they were cheering and just carrying on. So it was a loud venue. Let's just put it that way. Boston is a great sports town. I'm not going to take anything away from that. And their fans are very passionate. So, and they were in full voice last night. But anyway, so homeboy's sitting there, either next to Bob or in the row right in front of Bob, and he's got his phone cranked up all the way. He's got his ear pods in. God only knows what he was listening to. But he didn't, as Bob said, he didn't care a rip about what was going on the court. And finally, Bob had all he could take and asked the gentleman to at least key everything through his ear pods or turn his phone down and so forth so it wouldn't be such a distraction. The gentleman at some point got up, left his seat, never returned. And so where I'm going with this is, you know, a little bit of self-awareness, a little bit of what do you call it? Situational awareness. Reading the room would have been in order for this gentleman, just as a courtesy to those in his immediate vicinity, so he wouldn't be a distraction, especially during something as pivotal as the NBA Finals. And so that got me thinking about my some of my issues with the way people use their cell phones and so forth in this day and age. I know I'm dating myself, and I don't care. It's okay. I mean, Elsa's looking at me, and she's going, "Oh, here he goes. Here he goes. He's going to go on one of his rants." But it's okay. I'm trying not to be controversial. I'm just imploring my gentle readers, and that would be you, to use a little discretion and be courteous to the people around you when you're on your phone. Just understand that not everybody is interested in what you have going on your phone or your conversation, and just again. A little bit of distraction or discretion goes a long way so that you're not a distraction. There I am. So Anyway, I could go on and on about my rants against current technology and so forth, but I'll try to be restrained. And my kids make fun of me because I am 58. I am what I call a tweener. I'm not I'm not of my parents' generation that just basically held up their a cross when somebody flashed a cell phone and said, "Not me," or "I will not comply," and had nothing to do with the technology, and nor am I, one of the younger crowd that can't live without the technology. I was raised in a time that didn't have the technology, but I also learned how to use it as it became available. And even though my foray into social media and podcasting, for example, and other examples, even though my involvement in that has come later in life, and I've resisted it as long as I could. Um, I also understand that it is how people communicate today. It would be like uh, people over 100 years ago who would have resisted using a telephone, um, as a mode of communication. I'm not one of those people that is nostalgia for the time of the Pony Express and smoke signals. Nor am I someone who is just totally enamored with the current technology to the point that I can't function every day without being plugged into the matrix. So um, anyway, I just kind of wanted to get that off my chest. Yes, I am one of those people that laments the demise of phone booths and Burma Shave signs and full service filling stations and those kinds of things. I do miss those things. Um, I also understand that what I have to say on the telephone, for example, isn't for everyone else's ears, and nor do I desire to hear what everybody else is talking about. If I want to know what people are talking about, I'll go to Twitter or X. I'm sorry, or Threads, and see what people are posting if I'm of that mind. Um, but when you're on your phone in public, I talking in your outside voice, for all to hear, um, I don't know. I have a problem with that, and I know that some of you gentle listeners will probably have a problem with me having a problem with that, but that's okay. As the French say, "Vive la différence," and we are full service on this show, and we are international. So, um, again, your input is welcome, and uh, your I respect your opinions and your thoughts as long as you respect mine. So that's kind of the way this works. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. And you're probably, some of you young people are saying, what the hell is Beezy talking about now? Gooses and ganders, and what the hell does waterfowl have to do with what we're talking about? Someday you will learn. Anyway, um, so there's that. And I do appreciate you letting me take a moment for that little aside. And what we're going to do at this point uh, is go ahead and get ready for story time. I promised that we would do that, and I think we're ready for. I don't. I think it's chapter 5, but let me grab the book and we'll see where we're at, and we'll get back into Cloaks and Barbs and get away from all of this commentary. Here we go. Stand by. Okay. Um, we are back, and I wanted to say one thing vis-a-vis what we were talking about earlier. You know, uh, and my kids poke fun at me about this, and I just wanted to let you know that one of the reasons for doing this podcast was to kind of get me out of my comfort zone. This is very difficult for me, as you can imagine, with the ums and the ahs, and some of the difficulty I have working with the technology and the mixing and the editing and the so on and so forth. It doesn't really play to my strengths as I see them, and so this and my getting involved in social media to promote it and all of that uh, has been, like I said, it's gotten me out of my comfort zone, and I'm happy for that. I'm happy that it's gotten me, like right now. I'm too close to the microphone. That's much better, I think. But anyway, I just wanted to tell you that I do appreciate the fact that y'all are bearing with me as I get more comfortable with this new medium, and all of the nuances therein. So anyway, let's dive into my strength, which is my novel. This is Chapter 5 of Cloaks and Barbs, and so here we go. Chapter 5, Vorbunker, Berlin. Hitler sat behind his desk in the Vorbunker, his secret Berlin redoubt, deep beneath the large hall behind the old Reichstag building. Across from him sat his old friend and now Minister for Public Engagement and Propaganda, Joseph Goebbels. Next to Goebbels sat the ever-present and ever-subservient Bormann. It was late, and all three men were drinking tea and talking, as was their habit every so often. At the Fuhrer's side, on the floor, lay Blondie, sleeping and dreaming. Hitler looked down at her and saw her paws and muzzle twitching. "Look, she's dreaming of chasing something," he said, smiling and pointing. "Probably chasing Juden," Goebbels said, eliciting a chuckle from Bormann. "Probably," agreed Hitler, enjoying the relaxing time he could spend with his two most devoted and trusted advisors. The others in his inner circle would have been surprised at the level of informality that the three men shared privately. It was here, in the most informal of settings, and only here, that Hitler would allow himself to be called Wolf by anyone other than his beloved mistress, Eva Braun, and it was here that he allowed his subordinates to speak to him so casually. He looked at Goebbels, and a smile left his lips. "You look like something Blondie left up in the garden, Joseph," he said. There were dark circles under the man's eyes, which were red-rimmed and bloodshot, and he appeared to have lost weight that he could not afford to lose. Goebbels shrugged and drained his cup with one swallow. "Ach," he said dismissively. "I've been traveling too much, Wolf, trying to keep the Volk happy and productive." "And are they?" asked Hitler, his eyes narrowing. There was something in Goebbels' tone that was disconcerting to him. "Happy, no. Productive, yes. If Keitel and the fat fag could keep the damn Brits from bombing our factories, our Volk would be even more productive." Bormann snickered at his colleague's description of Goring, but Goebbels was not amused. "There are no better people in the world for working than Germans," he said. "Both of you know that. We have shortages of everything, and our people still produce. They're magnificent. But I'm telling you, Wolf, we're losing them. They're most definitely not happy." "What do you mean, losing them?" Hitler was scowling now. "Well, when your homes are being bombed, food is short, and your government is telling you that you still have to show up for work and now work twice as hard before, you tend to be disenchanted." "We're a nation at war, Joseph," protested Bormann. Goebbels nodded and downed his tea. "Yeah, we're at war," he allowed. "The Volk understand that. They understand they must make sacrifices to help the country, and they are more than willing to make those sacrifices. But I do not understand," Hitler said coldly. "Would they rather go back to the bad old days before this war, when unemployment and inflation were so high that people had to take to the streets? Is that what they want?" Goebbels shook his head and sat back with a disgusted sigh. "Nein, Wolf, nein," he said tiredly. "You're right, you don't understand. Make me understand, then." He leaned forward and stared threatening at Goebbels. "Make me understand." Goebbels ran a hand nervously through his thin, oily hair. "Talk to him, Martin," he said. "I'm too tired to be having this discussion at this time of night." Bormann started to speak, but Hitler cut him off. "What are you telling me, Joseph?" he asked angrily. "Are my people turning against me because they have to endure hardships in time of war? What sort of nonsense is this?" Goebbels simply sat with his head hung, shaking it slowly. "Are you the propaganda minister or not? Is it not your job to keep the people enthusiastic about fulfilling their duties?" He slammed his hand down on the desk so hard that Blondie leapt to her feet, her hair bristling. For his part, Goebbels was short of sleep and in an ill temper. He had heard enough and stood up. "Where the devil do you think you're going?" Hitler demanded. "I'm going upstairs to sleep, Wolf," he said. "Tomorrow, I have to find yet another way to sell this war of yours. As you pointed out, it is indeed my job. In fact, that is what I said that is what I've been doing ever now since we lost Stalingrad." With that, he turned on his heel and stormed out of the office. There was silence for a long while until Blondie turned to her master and began panting, her tail wagging happily. "What are you so happy about?" Hitler said to her. "Don't you know we should be miserable, like all the rest of Germany?" He smiled grimly, but he scratched her ears. "Eva hates her, you know," he said to Bormann, who had watched the preceding exchange in silence. "Blondie, you mean?" he asked hoarsely. Hitler nodded. "Yes," he said sadly. "She treats her horribly when I'm away, or so my aides tell me. I'm afraid she'll have to start traveling with me so that I can be sure of her safety." "Eva or the dog?" Bormann asked with a smile. Hitler smiled back, and the evil mood was lifted. "Oh, Martin, Martin," he said, sitting back tiredly in his chair. He stuck his knuckles into his eyes and rubbed. "Martin, dearest of counselors and friends, what are we to do? The Russians are coming from the east. We cannot defeat them. They are far too many, and the Allies will take Italy and will soon come across the Channel. What are we to do? They think that I am mad, you know, and perhaps I am. Bote was right. This war is turning against us, and now it seems that our people, our Volk, are turning against us, turning against me. They build tanks, airplanes, rockets, guns, bullets. They make incredible sacrifices. They do everything we ask. Joseph is right. They are truly magnificent people to keep our war machine working, all while having to endure day and night bombing. We cannot fight this war on several fronts, not anymore. The Reich is shrinking. Last year we controlled the continent from the Atlantic literally to Moscow. We controlled the Arab world. Our friends in the Pacific had America on her knees. Now we've been kicked out of Africa, and it appears we will lose Italy. We have France, objected Bormann weakly. Hitler snorted. Wonderful. We have France. I would almost rather give it back to de Gaulle than have it deal with that spineless Pétain. America controls the Atlantic and can resupply Churchill at will. The tide has turned in the Pacific, and our Japanese friends are losing ground faster than they acquired it. Those barbaric Soviet monsters will be on our doorstep before we know it. He rubbed his temples. We need a breakthrough, Martin. We cannot win a war of attrition, and that is the war we are fighting now. America has unlimited resources and is impregnable behind her two oceans, out of reach of von Braun's rockets. Britain can be defeated. It would take time, of course, except for America. If I could have committed one more army to Barbarossa, we could have defeated Russia. Again, we had to commit those troops elsewhere to fight the Americans in Africa and Italy. Damn them! He sat up and stared at Bormann, who could now see his leader's haggard face and vacant expression. Perhaps a negotiated truce is the answer after all, Martin. No, mein Führer, he said, shaking his head emphatically. No. You're letting fatigue show now. A negotiated settlement at this point would be madness. There was a knock at the door. What is it? Hitler asked sharply. An SS private entered the office with a paper in his hand. He was young. Bormann recognized him to be part of the communications staff and knew he was no more than 17 years old, and his hand shook as he held out the paper. A message, mein Führer, he said tentatively. It came over the command net 5 minutes ago for you personally. Bormann took it and handed it to Hitler. Thank you, Schacht, he said gently. That will be all. As the boy left and shut the door behind him, Bormann turned to see his leader standing behind his desk, his dark eyes glinting and his mustache quivering. Alarmed, he said, What is it, mein Führer? Hitler could barely conceal his excitement. The answer to our prayers, Bormann, he said gleefully, and brandished the paper in the air. Der Besucher. Here, read. He handed the message form to Bormann and came around his desk, capering from one foot to another and humming Das Lied der Beduschen, the national anthem of the Third Reich. Bormann, who had long ago become used to his leader's mercurial nature, was nevertheless astonished at Hitler's transformation from a beaten, despondent shell of a man to this almost giddy, dancing Pollyanna. He turned his attention to the paper and read, Chancellor, prepare to receive our ambassador at your Wolf's Lair, August 9th. Have your military leaders present to discuss the invasion of England. Santiago 4. Barbara switched off the tape player and painfully removed her headset. The phones were hurting her ears now that she and Carstairs had been listening to the mysterious signals almost nonstop for the last several hours in the outgoing signals office, taking breaks only to visit the privy. The other women were bringing sandwiches and tea to them so that they didn't have to stop working at their stations. She yawned like a cavern and stretched, rising from the uncomfortable wooden chair where she had been seated since Hawthorne had ordered the two of them to break the new German cipher. She rubbed her legs and her backside, trying to get the circulation going and wincing at the tender spots. Carstairs looked up at her and removed her headset. We could both use a break, I think, she said. Look at your ears, dearie. They're all red. Barbara touched them, and they didn't feel swollen and tender. It's these damned headsets, she said, picking hers up and looking at it accusingly. The Navy sonar boys use tissue paper to cushion theirs, so I guess we'll need to do that. I'm not making any headway at all, Carstairs said tiredly. The tones are all starting to sound the same to me. She chuckled and reached for tea. It's like having to listen to really rotten music over and over and over. Barbara frowned and stopped her stretching. What did you just say, hon? Carstairs blinked. What? You mean the part about the tones? No, she said. The part about music. Oh, that. I said, it's like having to listen to really rotten music over and over. She looked up at her American friend. Why? I've got an idea, Barbara said excitedly, but I'm not sure how to proceed with it. Who's on the board right now? Your lot is, dear. What is? Barbara threw open the door to the office and ran down the hall and around the corner to the French living quarters. She found all four French women sitting at the card table in the center of the room playing acey-deucey. They looked up when Barbara entered, and their looks were far from friendly. Yankees do not knock? Asked Dubois haughtily. Qu'est-ce que c'est, mademoiselle? Asked Desjardins, the dice cube in her hands preparing for her throw. Dominique, you studied music in school, didn't you? Barbara asked breathlessly. Desjardins looked confused for a moment. Mais oui, she said in her heavy Parisian accent. I say la musique et le langage. La Université de Paris before the war. La musique has not been very helpful at this post, but le langue est important, n'est pas? She looked at Barbara quizzically. Pourquoi? I need your help, honey. It's important. Penzance, Cornwall. The elders would be sending another contact group soon, despite his warnings to wait. Now, his part of the operation would have to be accelerated, which involved considerable risk. He had successfully evaded detection by the locals, but that would not last. He saw three possible future timelines, two of which involved his death at the hands of the local creatures. The third would depend on split-second timing and had a very low order of probability. The conflict on this planet had far too many variables, he reflected, and it clouded his sight. The mercurial nature of the aggressor leader on the continent changed the timelines with alarming frequency. One moment, the leader would commit himself to a certain course of action which has certain future consequences, and the next moment he would change almost on a whim. The future swirled uncertainly as a result. Had he been capable of such an emotion, he would have found the situation maddening. Nevertheless, he had to move. He had a considerable distance to go before he could report in again. He looked up into the night sky, selected a star on the proper bearing, and set out from his hiding place, making no more noise than the wind on the grass. USS Barb. Mr. Dunaway, bring us to periscope depth, ordered Matthews. Do it gently. 5 degrees up. Dunaway repeated the orders, and soon Barb was less than 60 feet below the surface of the southwestern approaches of the English Channel, 75 miles north of the Lyon region of Brittany. She was nearing the eastern edge of her kill zone, and they had not encountered any ships, friend or foe, since their rendezvous with HMS Agincourt. Matthews ordered the periscope raised as well as radio masts and did a quick scan of the area. Overcast, he said, for the benefit of his conning tower crew. Seas are about 3 feet, no contacts. Prepare to surface the boat. Sonar? Sonar is clear, skipper, Norris called out. Very well. Rig for red. Diving officer, surface the boat. Secure batteries and electrical motors. Prepare to engage diesels. In less than a minute, Matthews popped open the conning tower hatch and was able to take his place on the bridge, even as the last of the seawater rained off of the superstructure down the deck. Two lookouts with their binoculars scurried to their perches on the periscope shears, and a quartermaster's mate, as well as a telephone talker, quickly joined their skipper. He looked all around, taking in the sky, wind, and seas. It was going to be a dark night with little or no moon. He reckoned that the bottoms of the clouds overhead were no more than 300 feet from the choppy surface of the English Channel. He heard and felt the distant rumble of Barb's diesels coming to life, with a burp and gurgle from beneath the afterdeck told him that the engine exhaust was open. "Battery secured, sir," reported the talker. "Electrician's mate, third class Samuel Bradley. Diesels engaged." "Very well," Matthews said. "All ahead two-thirds." Bradley relayed the order to the control room, and the sea aft of the boat churned into froth as Barb quickly picked up speed. Once he was satisfied that all was well, he turned again to Bradley. "Tell the cooks that they can dump their garbage now and have Mr. Dunaway laid to the bridge." Bradley did so, and a few moments later Dunaway emerged from the hatch. "Let's stretch our legs a bit, Robert," Matthews said, and they climbed down the aft ladder to the cigarette deck and then down to the main deck. The 14-knot wind across the deck was warm and moist, and both men breathed in deeply. Presently, Washington appeared on the deck with a large bag over his shoulder. Dunaway motioned him over and noted that the skinny black cook was grinning, showing his white teeth. "What are you so happy about, Wash?" he asked. "Did you finally beat the chief in checkers or something?" The cooks had a round-robin checker tournament going on in the cruise mess whenever they were off duty, and Chief Conroy was proving to be a tough opponent. "No, sir," Washington said. "It's just that it's my turn to dump trash, and I don't get a chance to see the sea much down below." He breathed deeply and sighed. "I just love the smell of the sea, Mr. Dunaway." "I know what you mean," Dunaway replied with a nod. "That bag secured and weighted?" "Yes, sir, all hitched up nice and tight with two bright red bricks on the bottom." "Good man. Carry on, Wash." He watched as the cook heaved the bag into the boat's wake, where it vanished into the dark water. Washington ambled back forward slowly until he climbed up onto the cigarette deck and relaxed against the 50 caliber gun mount. He put his arms behind his head and gazed up into the low black clouds. "Those fellows really enjoy any chance they get to come topside," Dunaway observed to his captain, who had watched the entire trash-dumping evolution in silence. "That's why I rotate the lookouts and talkers as much as I can." "That's a good idea." "Something on your mind, Skipper?" Matthews was facing forward into the wind, letting the refreshing air blow all over him. "Yeah," he said after a few moments. "I figure we'll parallel the French coast tonight and turn back towards England tomorrow. We'll skirt the eastern side of our little kill zone and then see what we can see. Tomorrow night we'll turn back west and follow the Welsh coast for a while. What do you think?" "I doubt we'll see anything up that way, Skipper, to be honest, but if that's where you want to go, we'll go." "I'm not so sure. I want to make sure that Jerry hasn't snuck a radar picket up there close to the coast. Our bombers are getting mauled as soon as they cross into France on our daylight raids. The Brits are faring a little better at night, but the 8th Air Force is getting creamed. Somebody's tipping somebody off, and I'll bet dollars to Navy beans it's a crowd boat. Just wait until a bunch of B-17s fly over." "If you say so, Skipper." He looked up and down the length of the sub. "And if you're right, we've got the right boat and the right crew to bag it." He saw Matthews smile in the semi-darkness. "That's what I needed to hear, Robert. Come on, let's go mind the store." Santiago 4. "Oui. These are musical notes, naturellement," said Desjardins to her British and American counterparts after listening to the mysterious tones several times at various speeds. "Okay," said Barbara. "We figured as much, but what we need to know now is how they're structured and how they might form a cipher. I have no formal musical training, so I would know a half note from a treble clef, but you do." Desjardins nodded. "D'accord," she said. "I understand. Maintenant, if you hear them rapidement, they make no sense. If, pourtant, you make them slow, you can see the musical composition. Le message premier, she is arranged le temps ci-quatre." "Steady on there, Dominique," said Carstairs irritably. "I cannot go from English to French and back again like you can. Please try to speak so that we can understand." Color began to rise in Desjardins' cheeks. Barbara stepped in quickly. "It's okay, honey," she said soothingly. "Just slow down for us. It's really important that we get this right." Desjardins sighed. Like the other French women who were fluent in several languages, she found it incomprehensible that her English-speaking colleagues were not. The fact that they could jump between languages without thinking was a point of pride for them. For their part, the American and British operators always felt that the French women were speaking behind their backs when they spoke among themselves in their native tongue. "I am sorry," she said slowly. "I will try." Now, the first message is in 6/4 time, 6 beats in each measure, a very unusual time signature, and each beat is a single note. She consulted the notes she took while listening. The message goes: G, C, E, rest. F, C, E, D, F, A, rest. F, C, E, B, D, sharp, A, sharp, rest, G sharp, D, F sharp. There is a long pause, a whole note rest perhaps, then repeats 3 more times in Terry's song. "Blimey," muttered Carstairs. "How the devil can anyone make sense of that? For all we know, it could be a bloody one-time pad cipher, which is way over my head. That's Station X type stuff, that is." "Worse than that," Barbara said. "If it is a one-time cipher, then it's virtually unbreakable. Any part of it could be a cipher, the notes themselves, the time signature, any of it. The crowds could change the cipher daily for all we know. How in the world can we crack something like that?" Carstairs shrugged. "Exactly. Remember how much of a bear the Enigma code was? Even the blokes at Station X couldn't crack it. The Poles had to steal a machine or two and the plug boards before we could make sense of it." At that moment, the door of the signals office opened and Hawthorne stuck his head inside. "Ah, there you are, Desjardins. It's time for your lot to take over the board." He saw the headsets and the scribblings on the table in front of the tape machine. "Helping the other lasses on those devil's tones, are we?" "Dominique here has given us some insight into those new German signals, Group Captain," said Barbara, holding up Desjardins' notes for him to see. "The tones are really a set of musical notes, and she has given us the arrangement." "Eh?" he said as he took the notes and studied them. "Brilliant," he said while he read. "Positively inspired, Desjardins. Well done, lass." "Merci, Colonel Dazovitson," she said. "We do still not know what it means, pourtant." Hawthorne looked at Barbara. "By the long face, Lieutenant, this is bloody brilliant. The lads at Station X can make use of this, they can." "I certainly hope so, sir," said Barbara, "because we've hit a wall. If this is a one-time cipher, then we're sunk." "Aye," agreed Hawthorne. "If it is, it is. Right. Let's let Admiral Seymour and his mob get to work on this. You two," he pointed to Barbara and Carstairs, "find your bunks and kip for a bit. You look like you both could sleep for a month. I'll see to it that your mates leave you alone. Sorry, Mr. Desjardins. I need you on the board now. No rest for the wicked, or so they say." Desjardins rose and made for the door. "Au revoir, mes amis," she said to the others, smiling at them. "Thanks for your help, Dominique," said Barbara. "We couldn't have done it without you." "What she said," seconded Carstairs, yawning. "Merci." She slipped past Hawthorne and made her way down the hall to the operations center. Hawthorne watched her leave and looked back at the 2 bleary-eyed operators. "I like that you 3 were able to work together on this," he said. "I know the French have been a bit, difficult to deal with, but this is indeed good news on several fronts." Carstairs and Barbara sat there blinking stupidly at him. "Oh, go on," he said with a chuckle. "Have yourselves a kip. Lord knows you deserve it. Off with you now." Station X. "Well, Philip, it would seem that some of the Remington's chaps came to the similar conclusion about those queer tones of Jerry's as you did." Seymour handed Blair the message from Station L. "Splendid, sir." He read through the note quickly. 6/4 time signature. None of my lads saw that, I'm afraid. Hopefully we can do something with it. You think that it is somehow significant? When one is dealing with ciphers, sir, everything is significant. The lads will be interested to know this. Seymour turned his attention back to the other intercepts on his desk. "Right. I won't delay you then. Carry on, Commander." St. Earth, Cornwall. It was no good. His new orders required him to traverse too much country too quickly. There was no way he could make it to his destination before the elders sent their contact group. Had the storm the other night not altered his flight path, he would have landed closer to his objective, but there was nothing that he could have done about the weather. He paused under a group of thick, deciduous trees near a gravel roadway and tried to use his sight again. The leader of the aggressor nation was again clouding the future, he saw. The human's unstable mental state and highly variable emotions produced multiple timelines each with various orders of probability. For a moment, he was actually confused, as none of the new timelines showed success for his mission in particular and the overall plan in general. He concentrated and tried to discern any other variables that he might be able to manipulate. At length, the image of a sea-going vessel came into his mind. It could travel either on the surface of the ocean or beneath it, which meant it was a military submarine, but he could not tell which country it belonged to. His sight told him that the vessel was fairly close even now, perhaps somewhere to the south, in the water separating the island nation from the continent. He considered somehow contacting it and wondered how that contact would affect the mission. Another image slowly coalesced in his mind, that of an underground outpost of human creatures monitoring communications. He could see them, mostly females, puzzling over various messages, some of which were his. His sight told him that their involvement was somehow significant, and that they too had become variables that could affect the overall scenario. They were to the north, he could see, and making contact with them would be easier than contacting the submarine. He concentrated and imagined himself making contact, and waited to see what permutations would occur if he intervened in their activities. 4 possibilities emerged, 2 of which would mean success for his people and their mission. 2, however, would prove disastrous, and would mean that his people would have to abandon this planet and its inhabitants altogether. A 50% success rate was not normally high enough for him to consider abandoning his original mission, but he no longer felt he had a choice. The sound of an internal combustion engine approaching on the roadway momentarily distracted him and forced him deeper into the darkness of the trees. Vernon O'Malley cursed his Albion quarter-ton truck as it labored up the darkened road towards his small farm outside the village of St. Earth. The truck's 4-cylinder diesel engine had given him good service for nearly 15 years, but now, like its owner, it was beginning to show its age. With nearly 200,000 kilometers on the odometer, it rumbled and clattered loudly, blowing dark smoke out of a rusting tailpipe, sounding for all the world like a threshing machine gone awry. The truck was a single-cab model with a wooden flatbed upon which O'Malley hauled his various farm implements and occasionally harvests to and from his farm overlooking the English Channel and the villages of St. Earth, Hale, St. Hilary, and Ludvan. "Watch the road, dearie," chided Margaret, Vernon's matronly wife, as she bounced up and down in the passenger seat every time the aged Albion hit a hole in the dirt and gravel road. "I would watch the bloody road if it weren't for the damned blackout," Vernon said through his teeth. "A man can't even light his headlamps around here anymore." "The headlamps don't work anymore, dearie," Margaret reminded him. "They haven't worked since Mr. Baldwin was the PM. You know that. We're at war, after all. We have to be careful of those dreadful Jerry bombers, you know." "Yes, love, I know that," he said, his ill temper growing. They were returning from their seaside farm after visiting friends in Penzance, the Blythes. Percy Blythe made his own home-brewed beer, and the 2 men had drunk several tankards while the women gossiped and talked about their sons who were serving with the same regiment somewhere in North Africa. Now Vernon had a splitting headache from overindulgence, and Margaret was just tired. As farmers, they usually retired early and rose before the sun. They finally crested a small hill near a stand of thick beeches when the Albion coughed, rattled, and belched loudly. There was a loud bang from under the hood, and the motor stopped completely. "Oh, dear," said Margaret. "Did the old girl finally give up the ghost, do you think?" "Oh, shut up," snarled Vernon. "Probably out of fuel." He started to get out of the cab. "Did you top her up before we left for the Blythes?" "No, I did not top her up before we left for the Blythes. Before we left," he said as he staggered out of the cab and walked unsteadily around to the front of the truck. "Damned old lorry," he said under his breath as he opened the hood. "I can't see a thing. Maggie, hand me the hand torch under the seat." "I'm coming, love," she said, and Vernon could hear some thumps and other odd sounds coming from inside the cab as she looked for the flashlight. "I found it," she called out triumphantly. She exited the cab and came round the engine compartment, her large feet crunching on the gravel. "Here you go, sunshine," she said. Vernon clicked the button, and nothing happened. He tried again several times, shook it, and swore it, but it still stayed dark. Have you put batteries in it since Mr. Churchill became PM? Margaret asked mock sweetly. Don't be a clever git, woman, said Vernon venomously. He disassembled the device and found that the batteries were gone. That's what I thought, he said softly before ranting on his wife. What did you do with them, Maggie? Like as not, you used them for flaming paperweights? I did no such thing, Margaret said in her best shocked and hurt tones. I didn't even know the thing was there in the first place. Like as not, they're sitting on your workbench under about 3 tons of rubbish. Vernon ignored her and went to the bed of the truck where he kept some tools and an old heavy cloth fender cover. He brought back a wrench and the fender cover, which he laid over the radiator to protect his arms from the hot metal. Having trouble? Both of them jumped at the voice, which seemed to come out of the darkness of the trees to the left. Who's there? Vernon asked immediately. Show yourself. Oh, dear, wailed Margaret. Highwaymen! Robbers! Steady on, woman, said Vernon. I can handle this lot. Here, you. What's your game, eh? We got no money. We've only got bits of things here in our lorry. Worthless stuff for travelers. Why don't you clear off now, and... I do not want any money, said the voice, which was soft, yet menacingly. Vernon squinted into the trees, but could only see deeper blackness. I need transportation. My machine broke down on the road east of here. Margaret laughed nervously. You're in a bit of luck. Bad luck on that, stranger, she said. Our old lorry seems to have died too, as it were. Perhaps you could hoof it down the road to the shepherd's place a mile or so south of here. That's right, agreed Vernon, eager to have the stranger depart. I don't know what's wrong with me lorry, but she won't run, and we're of no use to you. Oh, I do not know about that, replied the voice civilly. I would be pleased to give it a look for you. Perhaps I can mend it. And what do you know about motors, eh? Asked Vernon suspiciously. I know enough, the voice answered. Why don't the two of you get back into the cab while I see what I can do? If I can get you going again, can you help me? You need a ride? Asked Vernon. Where to? Swansea. I have a very important meeting there that I cannot miss. Vernon whistled. Swansea? That's clear across the Bristol Channel, that is, all the way to bleeding Wales. Blimey, you need a boat more than you need a motor, laddie. It'll take us a couple of days in this old crate to get up there. In any event, we ain't got no fuel for the trip, rationing and all. And besides, me and the missus need to get back to our farm. It's late, and the local marshals have a curfew and all. We don't want no trouble, never been in trouble with John Law, and I don't intend to start tonight. A boat, you say? Asked the voice. Where can I get a boat? Margaret spoke up. There's plenty of fishermen up north of St. Ives that you could ask, she said quickly. It's not far. Perhaps you could take me at least that far. Margaret looked at Vernon and shrugged. Stranger, he said at length, if you can get this thing running again, I'll run you up there. You're going to need to buy me fuel for the trip. Done, said the voice. I appreciate it. Now, if you do not mind, get back in the cab, both of you. And when I tell you, try the starter. You understand? All right, said Vernon as he and Margaret climbed back into the cab. And don't go do nothing to me motor that I will have to undo, understand? If it's over your head, so be it. We'll walk home. They sat there waiting as they heard strange, heavy footfalls on the gravel in front of the truck. The bonnet was up, so they couldn't see the mysterious owner of the strange voice as he worked on the motor. Vernon was tempted to stick his head out the open window and peek at the mystery man, but a little voice in his head told him that it could be a very bad idea indeed. Do you think he knows what he's doing, Vernon? Margaret asked fearfully. The Blythe's homebrew was beginning to wear off, and the bravado that Vernon had felt earlier was wearing off too. He had an uncomfortable urge to jump out of the cab and run into the fields beyond the road, anywhere to get away from the stranger. Without warning, the engine began turning over and quickly roared to life. Would you Adam and Eve it, he said to his wife. That bloke gotta go without me touching the starter. Thank the Lord, said Margaret, sitting back in relief. And you can close the bonnet up there now, Vernon called. "We're much obliged to you." The hood came down with a crash, and the mystery man finally showed himself. Vernon blinked, and the hairs on the back of his grimy neck stood on end. "Hi! What you doing there wearing me fingercloth and all? Can't be cold, can you?" The man was tall, Vernon could see, but he had wrapped himself in the fender cover so that the O'Malleys could not see any part of him. He walked quickly round to the bed of the truck and climbed in. He leaned against the back cap glass such that the occupants could not see anything except the fender cloth. "All right," he said, and his voice sounded distant and muffled. "I have done my part, sir. Now please take me to St. Ives." "And what about the fuel?" asked Vernon. "I've not got enough to get all that way, and you didn't answer me. Why are you wearing me fender cloth?" "Do not worry about the fuel, sir, or about your cloth. I am merely borrowing it for a moment. Now, please, I am in need of haste." Shaking his head, Vernon put the truck into gear and released the brake. "Crazy city folk," he said to himself. As he started rolling, Vernon shot out the window. "You got a name there, mate?" "You can call me Wysicker." And that is it. Chapter 5 of Cloaks and Barbs, and we will be right back momentarily. Well, we've been a little long tonight. Part of that was my monologue earlier, and I appreciate you bearing with me as I unburdened myself. It was kind of like going to confession. So yes, I do feel better now. But we do need to bring this in for landing. We've got a busy day tomorrow, and I got a special show planned for tomorrow. Tomorrow will be mine and Susan's 36th wedding anniversary, and I do have some catching up to do with you all as far as the game yesterday and some other goings on, doings as the young people say. So at this point, I'm gonna go ahead and sign off on behalf of Elsa, my producer. Lily and Finn are not in the studio right this second. I heard Finn earlier, and you probably did as well. But anyway, that's the way it goes. And but I do want to encourage you to visit me on X and follow me. Remember, I do have a new website that's under construction. worldofbeezy.wordpress.com. If you see something on X that you like, go ahead and like it, follow me, and be sure to like and follow my podcast here on whichever platform you find me. And, we will talk again tomorrow. Live long and prosper.